And we're live. To answer, Christopher, this is not pre-recorded. We are live right now in the house. But okay, so first off, welcome everyone to the Solopreneur Sprints. This is a second iteration of the first Solopreneur Sprint. So originally it was supposed to just be one, and then we were supposed to switch topics every time. But there are things launching in later this year, later next year, and I wanted to save certain aspects for that. So now we're just going to go through, clarify certain parts of brand and content, because those are the most important things when you're first starting out on your creator journey, solopreneur journey, one-person business journey, however you want to frame it. You can conceptualize it all day long. But I'm Dan. I'm sure you guys know that. There's another Dan. It shows in the chat, but that's Joey. Joey, if you're here and not doing anything, you want to introduce yourself real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if you see the name Danco in the chat, like you said, it is actually I, Joey Justice, masquerading as Dan. But I am a performance coach as well as a solopreneur consultant. Learned a lot from Dan over the past few years and been helping people with productivity. I've also been a ghostwriter for the past year or so. I've written over 500 threads on Twitter, probably gained the clients that I've worked with over 1 million followers and not even sure how much money. And so I'm actually going to be doing a session next week on how to not only write Twitter threads effectively, but also repurpose those for other platforms. So excited to be a part of this and excited for what Dan has to share today.
Nice. Yeah, and so in the third call, so next Monday at the same time, Joey's going to be doing the medium form content training. And when I say medium form, that's pretty much like Twitter thread, but then also that's like the basis of if you want to create like a 10-minute YouTube video or even a newsletter. The framework is all the same, so that's something to look forward to from Joey because he's been ghostwriting for a long time, has tons of results and frameworks he can share with everyone. And the training he did in Modern Mastery for that medium form content was very popular. So bringing that over here will be even better. But let's get started straight away because there are some things in the chat that will be, there's like question stuff that will be clarified along the way. So we're going to start this presentation and we'll just dive straight in. So what we're going to do here is we're dissecting high growth brands from like beginner to advanced. And we only have so much time. So it's not like we can go over 50 brands. We're going to go over a few. But the purpose of us doing this is because all of the previous curriculum recordings that you find in the dashboard, they go over like all the fundamentals, the education that you need. I encouraged everyone to watch those first, but because this is going to be complementary to that, you can still learn this stuff on its own if you haven't gone through any of that. But at the same time, it's important to go through the curriculum calls as well to get the foundation, okay? So with that, we're going to go and just understand what we're going to be talking about on this call. So what will be covered? The first thing is we're going to understand how top brands position themselves to grow beyond the average creator, right? Because many get stuck in one stage and they get very comfortable in what could be or what you could consider a second 9 to 5. Now, they're not really comparable, but they don't grow beyond a certain point, and so they're stuck at a certain income level, certain follower level, and we just want to avoid that. Second thing is the majority of this slide will be a brand checklist that you can use to dissect and emulate the brands you love. And so by emulate, that means you can pull the lessons that you get from dissecting them and apply them to your own brand. Third thing would be profile breakdowns for beginners, intermediates, and advanced creators, so you can see how strategies change. And then the last is steps you should focus on. And sorry, it won't be as actionable as you want it to be. Someone mentioned, Alex, someone on Twitter mentioned actionable steps. There may be more actionable steps in the next call, but with branding, it's so like high level. It's less practical than you think, because if I give you like a boilerplate template or framework, that's how you just be the same as everyone else. So there's going to be some actionable steps here and there, but it's really just a process of iteration, and that will make more sense as we go through this. So the agenda for today, we run through the checklist. There's, I think, 12 things that we need to understand when it comes to branding, and you'll understand what I mean by it being so high level and somewhat intangible. And then second thing, we're going to go over my personal brand evolution, because that's what I know best, right? That I can talk all day about what I've done over the past 3 years. And I feel like that will be much more helpful than me going over other brands and trying to like piece together what they did along the way. So that'll be helpful in understanding the progression and hopefully bring some perspective to what's going on. And you can see Devin just popped in. If you can, Devin, turn off your camera for now. Thank you. Okay. And then the third thing we're going to do is brand breakdowns. So we're going to dissect 3 to 4 brands to bring clarity on how to take yours to the next level. I'm incredible at writing and not doing typos. But one note is feel free to talk to each other in the chat, but all questions will be reserved for the last call. This was one problem that we have to be conscious of from the last sprint, is that since this is a $150 product and there's more people in here than there would be in like a group coaching call, it is incredibly difficult for us to keep up with questions in the chat. It just doesn't really work. And we can't give that dedicated attention. So the last call is dedicated for Q&A and answering those questions that everyone has. So save your questions. We'll send out a questionnaire at some point over the next week to gather those questions so we can do it in a streamlined way so we aren't wasting time. So let's go straight into the actual brand checklist for authoritative growth. So these are very, as I said, for brand, it's hard to get very actionable with this, because with content, it's like, okay, yeah, you can start with the problem, go into actionable steps, add a conclusion, and then practice that, and then do better with time. But with brand, it's an ever evolving thing that you are improving with the feedback that you get from your audience. And sometimes that feedback isn't immediate for brand in specific, because someone probably isn't going to tell you, like DM you, your profile picture looks like shit. They're not going to tell you that, right? And so you have to be conscious of what is not getting clicks to your profile, what is not getting clicks to your, let's say, newsletter or whatever links you have in the bio, the awareness level that people arrive on your profile at, and other things like that. So with that in mind, let's just go through these. So the first thing we need to be mindful of is authority, right? You need some form of perceived authority, and that does not have to be personal accomplishments. Because when most people, like when you go through a basic social media growth course or you watch maybe a YouTube video on it, they're like, okay, in your bio, you should include what you've accomplished. And if you're a beginner, you may not have accomplished much, right? And so the way you position yourself and how you provide the certain value that you do will determine your authority. And so again, with brand, it's closely tied with content. So you may not be including certain things in your bio, so it's not immediately known to the individual what you're authoritative in, but you build authority through good content that delivers education, value, maybe even sometimes entertainment. So this is just one thing to keep in mind, because it's rather intangible. It's perception mostly. The next thing is design cohesiveness, which is much more tangible. So does your profile picture, banner, bio, tone, and product assets like featured images or your landing pages or the covers of, let's say, an ebook, or even your product design? Like I had a planner at one point and it was black, white, minimalist, kind of geometric patterns. So are those things cohesive, right? Are they not split up? And this will require you to at least use a design software like Canva and pay attention to using the same fonts, using the same colors, using the same type of icons or imagery. And you have to be mindful of the tone that sets across, right? So that's the third point, is aesthetics and vibe. So does your design convey the vision, feel, and perception that you're aiming for, right? So you can think about how I'm using examples that I personally resonate with, but you can change these interchangeably with who you are. So for me, it's like I think about how I perceive Stoic philosophers, right? They're very serious. They're like statues come to mind. And so you can see that my profile picture kind of reflects that, where I'm off to the side. It's black and white. It's very high contrast. And it kind of sort of looks like a realistic statue in a sense. And so that's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for very minimalist, elegant, bold, and putting across that like strong vibe, right? And my content is also, again, branding content are so tied that my content is very pithy, somewhat like Aristotle's writing, because I'm trying to match both. And so the next thing you have to pay attention to when people land on your brand is the what's in it for me aspect. And this mostly comes into play on your bio or on your website, or very like not your products or services just yet, but when people are first introduced to you, it's like, okay, what is this guy going to teach me? What am I going to get out of following him? And how is it going to benefit my life? Right? So that has to be made clear in at least the bio at the start. And so in the previous curriculum recordings, this is why I highly recommend, especially if you don't know what to do, especially if you don't like, you haven't iterated on your bio that much, is just start with relatable content pillars. So the 2 to 3 things that you write and educate people on, what are those? And are they relatable? Because some people go very high level where it's like, oh, I talk about abundance. And it's like, okay, some people may resonate with that, but that's still a bit out there. It's like, how does that apply to my life? But if I say I talk about skill acquisition, or I talk about web design, or I talk about self-improvement, that's much more, it's like, okay, I know exactly what that is. I may or may not be interested in that. I know how that's going to benefit my life, right? So you have to be very conscious of not going too high level unless you're aiming for that, right? If you're like, I talk about abundance, manifestation, and this stuff, the people that already know about that are more likely to follow you. But then you also have to think that you're trying to introduce people to certain things so that it can benefit their life. So you may want to start higher level, like just self-improvement or self-development. And then you have a starting place from which you can improve over time as you write content and as you put your own concepts and wording out there. So you make a tweet on like abundance, and if it gets very high engagement, then you know, okay, this would actually work in the bio itself to attract more people to it. So the next thing is, what ideas are you known for? And this is an over time thing, right? We're thinking very long term here, as we always try to do, but this is going to be the biggest thing that impacts the perception of your brand, is the ideas that you're known for, right? Because you think of people that write books, right? And so when I think of the present moment, or when I'm reminded of the present moment, or the now, right? I have it fucking tattooed on me. Eckhart Tolle comes to mind, the power of now, right? And I attribute anything that I really know about that perspective of spirituality to him, okay? And so if I talk about and I get good engagement and impressions and views on the idea of the one-person business, whenever people think about business, they're usually going to tie it back to me, right? And that's happened quite a bit recently. And with that, this is mostly a testing thing, where as we're going to go over in my brand evolution, it's not like I didn't even know about the concept of a one-person business. I didn't know about any of that. I kind of stumbled on it a year later, realized it got such good engagement, realized that I could create a cool little philosophy behind it and add some value to it. And then it's like, okay, I'm taking this, I'm running with it, and I'm going to start creating a bunch of content around it, just so it's nailed in people's heads and I can really test and see which angles work the best and what is the most helpful to people, so that the ideas actually register. And then over time, you start to land on a few. So lifestyle design for me is one of those things. And I can talk about that so many different ways, from whether it's like my productivity systems, or the 4-hour workday that I talk about sometimes, or all of these other things. And so when you start talking about these things in real life, it's kind of like a game of mental warfare, right? Because ideas kind of spread and are like mind viruses to other people. And the more you talk about those things, and the more they spread, and the more that people talk between each other, the more traffic or followers or audience is going to come to you because you're probably going to come up in the conversation, or they're going to recommend a YouTube video of you or a tweet of you, or they're going to send it around and it's just going to spread, right? So you have to think of this in more ways than just putting out content, getting that content retweeted and getting it shared. That's very important, but it goes deeper than that, right? It goes beyond that. And so the other thing is, with this, we talked about in previous call recordings, is you're writing content to test these, and you're just hitting a bunch of different angles. And this is why I like Twitter so much, is because you can just post all the time, right? Instagram and other things, it's like you can post once a day, YouTube maybe twice a week, podcast maybe once a week, things like that. So Twitter, it's like you can get them out and start writing and figuring out different angles very fast, but only if you start writing, right? This is a given that you have to actually be doing this stuff in order to actually find these things. And then once you understand, okay, this topic gets consistent engagement for me, this video did well, this other thing did well, you can start to conceptualize those things and think about them, about how you can create your own category from them, or how you can make them your own, right? So if I talk about productivity a lot and how I work 4 hours a day, which kind of sort of isn't true anymore, so I don't talk about it too much anymore, then you conceptualize it into the 4-hour workday, the one-person business. And I'm using myself as an example here, but there are many other things that you can think about here where, like even Daniel Vassallo, he talks about small bets a lot, and he's conceptualized that. And when people think about investing or small bets, they tend to attribute, or they think about Daniel Vassallo, right? There's a feedback loop in the mind that goes back to him. And so next thing is, what makes you different? And here I'm not talking about the ideas. I'm not talking about certain things. I'm talking about the intangible things that contribute to your growth. So this could be like the animation style I've been using. And so since I'm larger than most people that are using them, when other people see those animations and they know me, then it's usually like I'm still going to pop in their mind occasionally, even though I'm not, like, they aren't my animations, but they may refer back to me, right? And I may be mentioned in the comment sections or something like that. And so same thing goes for Hamza, where he has the whole, like, Jeffrey, which is like a mediocre person, and then the Adonis, which is like exceptional person, and he formulates his videos that way. But I've seen other people start to do it where they have those two characters, and I still think of Hamza every time, right? I don't even think of this creator that I'm watching that uses those two things, right? So you kind of have to find your own way of doing that. And again, as I said, it's kind of intangible. It's difficult to just like tell you how to do it, because that's impossible. Next thing is, and all of these are cumulative, right? You don't need all of these at the start. These are just things that you want to hold in the top of your mind as you're building over the next year to see like how you can increase the impact of your brand, right? So pull what you can from these and what you can do from these, and then add to it over time. So one big thing, or these two things right here, value off the socials and where do people go next, is a low-hanging fruit that anyone can handle, but they don't think is very important. So for the first one, are you providing value, quote unquote, or doing things off of top of funnel social? So what are you building? Are you building a product? Are you writing a book? Are you writing a newsletter? Are you building an agency? What is it that you are doing that allows you to pull lessons from and talk about them on social media, right? Or are you just building on social media? Are you learning certain things, right? Are you studying the crap out of productivity systems and distilling your lessons? What are you doing that allows you to bring value to social media, right? Rather than just like, I'm posting on social media. Are you transforming your body? What is the goal that you are going after that you're going to struggle to solve and have that value to give on social media, right? So that's very important, and that should be mentioned somewhere in your bio. So in mine, I just have way too many things and I need to distill this down. But it's like, for me, it's like building modern mastery, self-improvement community, digital economics, big course, software Book is launching in September now. Stoked about that. And potentially a physical gym, right? So it's like I'm doing a lot of things that allow me to bring cool lessons to social media, and over time that builds my authority, right? So we talked about authority in the last slide. This is one way that you do it. The next thing is, where do people go next? Because on social media, how do I put this? On social media, it's like, yeah, you can have a social media account. That's great. But where do people go to get more from you, right? Is it just you have a tweet and that's it? What if people are hungry for more? What if they want to buy a service from you? What if they want to download your lead magnet? What if they want to go deeper into that topic that you're going to talk about in your next newsletter? What about a product? What about even just other social media channels like YouTube or a podcast? And we'll talk about this when we go into my brand and my thought process behind that. But where do people go next? What links do you have in your profile? And this can be as simple as, because right here it says, do you have an awareness, nurture, and sales mechanism? So for awareness, this would usually come in the form of a lead magnet. So a link to like a free ebook that goes over the basics of what you talk about frequently, whether it be fitness, spirituality, building a business, whatever it is that you do, right? Or at the same time, it can be a pinned thread that goes over the basics of what you talk about. So if you talk about fitness, then it's like your pinned thread should be some form of high performing thread that we're going to talk about how to do in the third call. But it could just be as simple as like the 10 commandments of losing 10 pounds this month, right? Because then that will get people on the same page of what you're going to talk about in your content. This is very important, because if you want to talk about certain things, but you know that people aren't going to register with it, or you aren't getting much engagement on it, it's because there's an information and education gap between them. So how are you going to fill that with a static asset like a pinned thread, pinned post on Instagram, featured video on YouTube, or lead magnet, that when people go through it, they will now understand the content that you want to write, right? So you don't only have to go with the high-performing, validated, very basic topics to continue to grow, and that way you can talk about just what you want to talk about. And so this is part of the reason why I'm writing a book, is because the people that purchase my book will understand each and every piece of content that I put out from a much deeper level, and it will get more engagement because of that. Right? So there's levels to the game, if you will. And the next thing is implied target audience. So a lot of people tell you to call out your target audience, especially in your bio. It's like, I help struggling founders do X, Y, and Z, you know, the typical value proposition. Or it's like, I help small business owner increase their revenue with SEO. Or I help busy professionals get in shape in only 2 hours a day. It's like, you don't have to limit your audience to only attracting those people, because you can create customers through your content by educating them to the point of buying your product or service. So the point here is that you can imply a target audience in the language that you use, the problems that you target, right? Because only certain people are going to have certain problems. Like busy professionals, what is the main problem it is that you're actually trying to solve for them, right? And how can that be mentioned in your bio to attract not only them, but other people with that problem? Because in marketing, the only reason you're creating a target or a niche or someone is to figure out the problem that you are trying to solve with your products, services, and content, right? So if you can talk about the problem, or even brand and design yourself in a way that will attract them, like I'm attracting people that really like just vibe with the minimalist style. They may not even like my content at first until they're attracted to the minimalist style. They follow me. They're like, this looks cool. And then they read my content and they're like, oh, okay, that's true. I'm starting to like this. And then you nurture them to becoming or like understanding what it is that you talk about and educate them on, to the point of eventually just sending more people to you because they know you, or buying a product or service or something like that. And the other thing with this is going broad to narrow. So I like to keep the like social media stuff very broad to attract the most people. And then when you go down a level to newsletters or lead magnet or product, then you get much more specific on who it is that you help, right? So social media, you can be very broad, but then in your product, you can be like, okay, this is for busy founders that want to get fit in less than 2 hours a week. You know what I'm saying? Because then you're not limiting yourself to top of funnel growth and the opportunities that are available to you and the spread of who you are and what you do, right? Because even if someone isn't in your target audience, they probably know people that are in your target audience and they're going to refer them to you. The next thing to keep in mind, and these are more minor, or this one specifically is more minor, but it's platform differentiation. So how do your platforms differ outside of content, right? Because the content is usually going to be the same. At least in my case it is, where I repurpose the newsletter to YouTube. I just copy paste my tweets to Instagram, LinkedIn, literally copy paste, and then use them as like real scripts and other things, right? So the ideas themselves aren't going to differ very much, but what is it that sets you apart on those platforms? Because for me, Twitter and Instagram are faceless. You don't see my face. And so people that are introduced to me from there, it's like, okay, this is kind of cryptic. I don't really know this guy yet. But then when they go to my podcast or they go to my YouTube and they're introduced to that next layer of me, then they feel that connection forming a lot more, right? Because then, oh, this is how this guy talks. Like he's kind of a dickhead on Instagram and is very like gives this harsh advice. But then I watch his YouTube and it's like, oh, okay, he maybe I kind of like him. I don't know yet, but that's how it works. And so the next thing, this is actually very important, is does the community know you? This is low-hanging fruit that most beginners need to get down and get nailed into their head, is that if your ideas aren't being spread without your effort, so like with a book, or you've just been in the game long enough so that your ideas are circulating, I'm talking like 1 to 2 years of you writing content. If you haven't done that yet, then are you actively contributing to the community? Are you DMing people? Are you getting on calls with other creators and helping them with what you know best? Are you just making friends? Are you giving value, quote unquote? I know that's kind of like, it's not tangible, in the replies to other people, right? Are you putting your name and your profile in as many spaces possible that will get eyes on it and slowly grow your following until that starts to compound and take over by itself? Right? So you just want to put yourself in as many situations as you can in order to get your name out there until your name starts getting spread on its own. Because that's a big disconnect that people have at the beginning, is like, oh, this Dan guy, like he's just growing automatically. I can't do that. But they don't see, like, man, I was going hard as fuck, just like trying to get my name in people's mouths at the beginning. It was all manual work at the beginning. So last thing just to keep in mind is, are you growing or dying, right? It's the duality of creatorship, is if something isn't working, change it, man. I see this way too often where it's like, I'm losing followers, or my content isn't doing well, or I'm not making any product sales. It's like, there's something that you can do. There's a skill that you lack that allows you to allow that thing to grow, whether it be your sales, your following, or something else. There's something that you aren't aware of. There's a problem that you aren't aware of that someone has solved and can teach you if you spend the time to immerse yourself in the information that will teach you that skill. So whether it be constant education by buying courses and implementing them, or just watching YouTube videos, watching podcasts from creators or online business owners, and slowly having these lessons and tactics seep into your mind until they all piece together into one image. And then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. This is what I was doing wrong. Let's go and correct this thing. So there's that. And I believe that's it for the actual checklist. And this slides will be uploaded if you want to refer to these. But now let's go back to the humble beginnings of my own account. So perspective here, right? I was not always on Instagram. I was not always on YouTube. I didn't always have a podcast. It started on Twitter for me, That's what I recommend because I can usually teach that the best, but it's not the only way, but it is a good way. And so you can see here that I started around 150 followers, so I didn't get a screenshot from then, but up to 550, you can tell that I was just putting in the manual work to spread my name, right? Lawrence King was probably around 10K at this time. You can't really see like the 6 others that follow you, but I was consistently DMing and replying to and networking with bigger names in the industry, and whether that be 10K to like 50K to 100K followers. I was talking to them, taking conversations to Telegram or WhatsApp, sending voice notes, and just trying to solidify my stance in the community. And so you can see here that I had a bit that the banner here was actually my first business card, not the words under it. It was just web design. But this was like the design I made because I had previously done web design and was doing web design. But another thing that you can see here is that I had a course immediately. That's actually what kept me consistent on growing the brand, is that I had a project to focus on. And so people will give advice one way or the other where it's like, oh, you don't need to create a product or service at the start. But then it's so easy to just not feel responsible to actually show up and grow and have something like have any form of reward for your actions, right? And have a way to like slowly compound the results that you're getting, right? So that's one thing to notice. And then you can see here, I changed the profile picture. Both of these in my eyes, like they're very cringe to me now, but at the time I thought they were like the coolest images imaginable. But yeah, so this is just kind of for perspective where you don't need to have things perfect from the start. You need to plant your foot. You need to interact with people. You need to provide some form of value. Create a website, a newsletter, a product if you can. And of course, we talked about these in the previous calls. Of course, this is just for perspective, but you can see what's going on here. Another question that people ask while we're here, do you need to create a new account if you've had one for forever? It says I joined in February 2011. I started in 2019. My account saw absolutely nothing until then. You can start a new account. You don't have to, but I didn't start a new account. So something to think about there. And then just going even further, so I changed it again. I took this profile picture in the garage of a house that I was living in with 7 other dudes. I set up a camera. I had crappy lighting. I studied how to create a Photoshop like headshot, and I ended up creating this, and it looked pretty decent. And we can walk through. So in this first bio on the left, it says, learn to thrive in a world of distractions with multiple streams of income and a free mind. Start a web design biz from scratch. And so at this point, and then I was trying to be clever and get more clicks by having bit.ly/Dan's OnlyFans. I don't know if that actually got me any more conversions, who knows. But you can see that I'm like toying with things here. Like brand is evolving and I'm kind of just going with the flow to see what sticks, what doesn't. And at this point, I had also built lead magnets. So I had in the previous one, on the right, you can see that I had 2 free ebooks. So I know that one was on web design, just how to create a website, like very basic, just like hour-long video that would lead into the course, which was, at this point, it was just the ebook. But then in these images, it was both the ebook and a full-fledged like video web design course. And that's what I was trying to land clients in at this time, was web design and doing that. And that's how I built my authority. People knew me as the web design guy to an extent, even when it wasn't like explicit in my bio, especially on the right one, right? People didn't exactly know that I did web design, but I talked about it in my content so people knew over time. So a lot of people have this disconnect where it's like, everyone needs to know exactly what it is that I do for my service, and that's the only thing my profile should be based around at the start. That's not how it works. Content is the main thing here, but brand is going to form the perception of how the people you attract and how they see that content. And I believe all of these were a year difference, right? So that's also a huge perspective shift, is that from 550 to 10K followers was a year. And then the next year it went to 100K, and now it's 300K on Twitter specifically. So it's compound growth. So again, it's very easy to get discouraged on this journey, but at the same time, it compounds, right? If you can get to 10K in a year, you're doing absolutely incredible. And some people get there much faster, some much slower. It's all a part of the journey, really. And so hopefully that provides some perspective. We're going to, I didn't expect this to take this long. We're probably going to go an hour and a half today, but let's go straight into like my brand journey so you can understand what exactly it was that I did. I'm opening this, so I'm losing train of thought already. But what exactly it was that I did like on all socials, because you just saw Twitter, right? It took about a year to get to 10K through the content that I did on there. We'll break down some of my content in the next call. But here, like you can see that I don't want to it took a while to actually scroll down to this. I don't want to screw it up. But you can see here, 304 weeks ago. Is that 3 years? That's like 4 or 5 years. So this is when I was doing digital art for Instagram. I deleted some, but this is how I learned Photoshop. This is kind of how I got to like 2,500 followers on Instagram. But then you can see I just started to switch things around. And so at this time, you can see the profile picture. I was around 6 to 10K followers, where I just started cross-posting stuff to Instagram. And when I launched the Power Planner, and you could see in the slide, if you missed it, at the 10K followers is when I started promoting the Power Planner itself, the physical one. But then I decided I don't want to do a physical product. It was just a pain in the ass shipping it out of my house. But let's just quickly walk through this. You can see the iteration where it's just screenshots of my tweets. And then I hired someone to help with Instagram, and it was not a good move. And then I tried out different post styles, and these were getting like 28 likes, 24, 29. Like I was not growing on here because I wasn't putting the effort into getting my name spread on here. I wasn't very active on Instagram, but I was on Twitter. I was just cross-posting over to here with templates that you can make in Canva. I made these in Photoshop, but I was just copy pasting my tweets, right? And then we go further. I did this for a long time, just every day, every single day, show up, take 5 minutes, copy paste it over. And then tried different post styles. And we actually started to pick up here. So 100 likes, 384, changed the style, started getting more black and white, focused on that. And then here was actually a pretty big shift for me, where some people don't think about this too much, but in terms of authority, right? What was my authority when I pivoted out of web design and came over to Instagram? My authority here was that I already had engagement on these tweets, right? And so even though I only had still probably like 3,000 followers because of the Instagram art, and I was starting from scratch pretty much, is that I had already seen some success on Twitter. And so because people saw the high engagement, they're like, oh, okay, this guy's on to something. He's not new to all of this. I'm going to follow him. And I'm going to like this because it already has likes on it. It's social proof. It's authority, right? It's because if it has like 10 likes on the post itself, there's no real authority there until like once it hits 1,000 likes, then more people are going to start to like it. And that works with like your follower count too. If you have 100 followers, some people just aren't going to follow you because you have 100 followers. You haven't spent enough time in the game. You haven't grinded it out. But then once you get to 10K, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a reason this guy is being followed. I'm going to follow him. And the same thing transfers over to content on socials. You can see here, I started getting into YouTube. When was this? 2021. So So 2 years ago, this is when I started to try to be consistent with YouTube. And we'll go over that because it wasn't very consistent. But it's just a constant game of testing. But I had the basis down where I was just posting the tweets. Again, testing new style, testing new profile picture, testing. Started incorporating different kinds of reels. This is where we really hit a stride. And I started doing the graphics in Figma, and I had experience with this because I was already doing the Photoshop. And it slowly turned into this. So again, it's all exponential. We did the animations, and it's compounded, right? Makes sense. So now with the podcast, this is somewhat important, as we talked earlier, where Twitter, you're not posting much of your face. Sometimes you may be able to, but you're usually just focused on high quality ideas via writing. That is what Twitter is best at least for now, until Elon changes something. But I realized this, and it's like, okay, I want to start a podcast so I can deliver some longer form depth behind the tweets themselves. And so I started talking to guests. This is also how I made myself known to the community, right? If you don't have any way of providing value at the start and you're having trouble actually connecting with people and getting on calls, people love getting on podcasts. It's actually insane how many people want to get on podcasts. So you start a podcast, and then you just start connecting with people that are slightly above you, right? And you start to work your way up the ladder. And I was talking to people like Eddie Kwan. Shout out Joey for being the first podcast episode. We were both probably around 5,000 to 10,000 followers there. And then Path to Manliness had like 50,000 followers. So you can see that I'm starting to get in with more people, like Rob Lipsett, who has 500K on YouTube. I was stoked about that one. And I'm just getting my name in the mouths of people that are larger than me, and it comes back, right? Because they know I have some form of value to offer by just having them on an interview for the podcast. And then I slowly stopped doing that, started doing solo episodes. And then once YouTube started doing well, I just started posting the YouTube videos to here, right? Because it didn't make sense to continue doing, like I reached the quote unquote next level. And so again, for perspective, let's look at YouTube, where this was very quick once I found the idea that I wanted to become known for, right? The one-person business. A lot of you probably know me because of it. It's crazy how I say this sometimes, nothing happens and everything happens, where these were doing okay. These all right here had maybe 2,000 views until this video that just popped up to 500K. The rest of the videos followed. And so you can't see that now, but that's what happened. And then after, I'm like, okay, this video did well. Let's go further, deeper into it. Don't go too deep into it. Don't one-dimensionalize myself. Boom, boom. Again, one-person business. And I was just slowly incorporating those while talking about other concepts that I thought would do well. And about a year later, we're here, right? And things are, it's up and down. It's interesting because I'm still technically new to YouTube and trying to figure out how to keep things up. But another thing that many people don't see, this is the back end, but let's go to the videos that I put on unlisted, because you can see that this is a long-term thing. So 10K calorie challenge. This was some years ago. I went over my acne journey. Like, I was not focused at all here. Did a Twitter Q&A. Should you go to college? All of these videos sucked, like, to me, right? Like, I was just I wasn't good at speaking on them. I didn't have any flow. I didn't have any structure, but then eventually I found it and started getting more confident on camera around here, but still didn't like it. And then, going even further, like, I tried a bunch of different things, and eventually, like it just, you understand what ideas start to do really well, and it just makes sense, right? So you have to build your portfolio of failures until you can afford to succeed. Quote that. Okay, so enough about me. That was too long talking about myself. I apologize for that. But we're going to start here, where Myra is very new to Twitter, May, right? And she has posted how many tweets? 92 tweets. A lot of them probably being replies, right? She started off here, and you can see how like simple that she's changed her profile picture like 20 times. She's changed it more than I have, and I changed my profile picture a lot at the beginning. But like it was as simple as something like this, where she tagged us, I liked, and something as simple as a like if you just give praise, like I wish I could do this for everyone. Don't spam this. There's other people on Twitter as well. But like just being authentic and having some form of understanding of how to write on social media, like you've learned from the sprints, is going to set you so far apart from other people that have no idea what they're doing and just starting from scratch, right? And so like all I did was like this, and I'm assuming Hayden, who's at 3,000, commented, and that got some traffic to this post, right? And so she got 70 likes, 43 on this. And if you're just like tagging people, talking to them, being authentic, showing that you're a cool person to be around, then it's, yeah, see, even a like, wow, a like from a bigger account, if you're like talking to them, you don't even need retweets. Wow, I'm just now realizing this is like, this is why I'm saying it's so big to just like connect with people in the community. This doesn't happen on Instagram or YouTube or any of that. You talk to larger accounts, let's say 20, 50, 100K, and just be authentic. Be like, yo, what's up, man? Love your brand. I started on Twitter because of you. Awesome to see that. Or I don't know, thank you, something like that. And if they like it, that alone is going to start to boost your impressions. And even though some of you are going to say like, oh, she's only at 143 followers, that's insane. In May 10th, in 5 days, right? Sometimes it takes people like 2 months to get to 100 followers because that's the biggest grind. And I'm telling you, just make yourself known in the community. Be a cool person. Don't just regurgitate. I don't want to look at my own tweets and the comments because some of you might be in here. But if you're just posting like the most basic stuff, like not really adding anything to the conversation under people's tweets, they're not going to pay attention to you because they know you're just trying to like scalp followers. But if you're genuinely trying to make connections with other people, then it's like, okay, yeah, this guy's cool. I'm going to follow them. And, or just like their post, maybe even retweet one. On Twitter, it's that simple. On Instagram and other things, I don't know. That's why I like going Twitter first and then just cross-posting and leveraging that audience you build to everything else, even though your potential on Twitter may be less than that of another platform. I wouldn't let that scare you away from Twitter, right? Because I'm at 325 here, but 1.5 on Instagram, catching up to this on YouTube. Like Twitter is such a valuable asset that people still don't seem to get. But next, let's look at an 8,300 follower account, Dan Goldfield. He's been in digital economics and he's been just absolutely killing it on all fronts. But you can see here the authority aspect shows through so well, where he studied with a monk for 5 years. So he has that prior experience where he went and did something off of social media, right? But you could spend 5 years studying self-development and implementing self-development and doing that kind of thing, or fitness or whatever it may be. It's all about positioning. And so you can see here that he positioned it so well. I got a notification on my computer, but you can see that he's positioning it so well here because you can turn something that is seemingly boring in your own mind into something that is just the most interesting thing in the world for other people. And so here, he studied with a monk for 5 years, meditated for 29,366 hours, then married a hot neuropsychologist. Mission, normalize well-being for 1 billion people. So this is what people are going to get, right? We talked about that in the checklist. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? He's going to normalize well-being for you, right? 72x your meditation benefits. He's leading them somewhere. Where do they go next? Here. But now the awareness, right? So we talked about like getting them to the point of understanding your content. He has a pinned thread. It did really well. It has social proof. He studied with a monk for 5 years, pretty much the same as his bio, right? So what's next? This is next. It's proven. Mindfulness is a cheat code for life. Here's the 4 steps. Very basic, applicable to anyone. And eventually, through his content, he nurtures you, content and newsletter, I'm supposing, nurtures you into becoming a client. And his offer is on mindfulness. So that's another lesson in this, is that you can monetize anything. He's monetized mindfulness. I believe if my numbers are correct, he made 10K with 8K followers without much direct outreach. And he could have done it with direct outreach with 0 followers if he wanted to, but the followers help a lot. So that's just case study in and of itself, is that you can do what you want if you study persuasion, marketing, sales, writing, the things that I tell you to learn in my YouTube videos and everything else. It's just about actually doing it and iterating and being serious about it. That's the other thing, is that Dan has just been in the DE Discord, like connecting with people like mad. And I'm assuming he's been doing that on Twitter itself. You don't need digital economics. You don't need to actually like join any of these communities, because social media is just a giant community that you can leverage, right? If you start spreading your spiritual seed. All right, next, Justin Welch. I always go over Justin Welch in these. I talked about him in the previous curriculum calls just because he has absolutely nailed, he knows what he wants. He knows what he wants so much. He wants to talk about solopreneurship. He has a great story that led to him being a solopreneur, right? Because he did something offline. So he built his, he had like a SaaS advising business and was managing 100 plus people, very corporate level stuff. And he decided, hey, I'm tired of this burnout. I want to go and just be a solopreneur. And he started on LinkedIn first, but is now on Twitter. And he's just very focused. He has good, sensible content without being polarizing, that just does very well. And so you come and you look and you're like, oh, okay, he did 108. The reason he's getting this engagement is because he does this much in revenue. But again, think about the entire journey. He didn't start here. It's compound, right? He's growing a lot faster now because now he has results that he can flex. And he's an absolute expert in flexing his income without it sounding like scammy or braggy or narcissistic. He just talks, I don't know, he's great at this. Great person to study if you want to like flex results that you have. But what else is it? So let's talk about his like simple funnel in a sense, because this, I stole this from Welsh, where he doesn't have any fancy sales funnels. He has a newsletter. He has, let's look at his LinkedIn because it's more clear here. He has his newsletter. He has the operating system, and he has, I don't know where his other links are, but he also has a content system that he created after he gained a lot of followers on social media that he helped people with. And that's it, right? He doesn't have any like fancy upsells or downsells. He has 2 landing pages, $150 products, and he cashes out big. So that alone brings perspective to the fact that you don't need to go insane with all of these fancy like sales funnel scarcity tactics, even though solopreneur sprints was kind of a scarce thing. Still, it shows you that he can do, like you can do all of this without selling your soul. Big lesson there. Now, Hamza. Many of you know him. Many of you don't, I'm assuming. But he is, like, he's undeniable on YouTube specifically because of just that huge jump that he had and how authentic he is and how much he doesn't care about. He cares about what he says, but in the right direction. He doesn't care what other people think about what he says. And so he had an interesting journey recently where he was doing the very like short, like there's 8 minutes 30. They weren't even that short, but he did the whole Jeffrey Adonis thing, and people see this and they're like, oh, that's Hamza, right? This style right here with the meme face, the Giga Chad face, and all that stuff. So he got very creative after like a long time and improving with time. And eventually he, as he said to himself, fulfilled his purpose, and he switched back and is now doing like more just talking head, straight to the point videos because he can afford to do that now, right? So you have to take into account, as we talked about in the previous curriculum calls, is that like not all YouTubers started as vloggers. That's what I like to say. But in reality, it's like the people that you watch can do what they want because they built the authority, the credibility, and put in the manual work to get to a point where they could talk about whatever they wanted, right? They created a path for them to do that for themselves. And so Hamza, as does Justin Welsh, even though Hamza goes a bit harder on like the direct response marketing, is he just has a simple landing page. He has a bit more of a funnel, and I'm pretty sure, man, this, I haven't actually looked into this. I was just told this is what he does, but I'm pretty sure Adonis Academy, his community, is $500 a month, and he got to 100K a month with it in a month. Does it even say on here? Yeah, 500. Oh, it's not a month. Okay, 500 initiation, 99 a month. That's pretty interesting. I might actually take that, but yeah, it just goes to show that he's monetizing self-improvement, right? He's not necessarily, he talks about making money occasionally, but this is just a limiting belief that so many people eventually come by on their journey where it's like, I'm not making any sales with this because I haven't developed the skill set to actually make sales with this. So the only people that make money online are the people that teach about making money online. And it's just not true. There's many people that have proven that otherwise, like Dan Goldfield, like Hamza. He wasn't talking about any of that stuff before this. I don't think, at least his products were around like fitness and self-improvement. And he made that work by being a personal brand, as we're talking about here. Brands, on the other hand, only growing on social media may struggle with that a bit more because it's more difficult to be like truly authentic and show that you're a relatable person and like a friend to the people that follow you. So my main point of showing Hamza here is that he had the long form platform and he focused only on YouTube for the longest time. It's an option. It's an option. I like to recommend Twitter because it's more in your control. And especially like there's so many moving factors here where Hamza is a seemingly good looking dude. He has that articulation, that tone. He's put some work into himself. And a lot of people don't really have that, right? And it's going to be difficult to capture that attention and deliver some form of value via YouTube. YouTube may not be your best fit at the start. So what I like to recommend, if you want to be a YouTuber specifically, is to start YouTube, start iterating, but also have a more controllable short form platform like Twitter, where you are driving traffic to the YouTube and slowly building authority in two different domains, right? Where Twitter, it's more cryptic. You don't really need the face. You don't need the vanity. You need good ideas, which is a skill that you can learn. And then you transfer that over into YouTube, where you slowly cultivate the skills that YouTube requires, like charisma, speaking, articulation, and again, having those good ideas and letting that compound with time. So again, like Hamza just has a personal Instagram account. He doesn't do really anything with it aside from probably talk to girls and DM people that he wants to meet up with. And that's probably it, really. But next one is Kinobody. And the reason I bring him up is because he's been around for a while and he is incredibly polarizing. That's not what I want to talk about him. I want to talk about the unique mechanism and the ideas that people know him for that helped, that were the foundation of his success. So Kinobody even though he did not come up with intermittent fasting and reverse pyramid training, he was one of the first people to actually popularize it to the extent that he did, right? Martin Burkhan was kind of the pioneer in the industry, and then they have beef with Greg O'Gallagher, Kinobody occasionally with this, is that Greg O'Gallagher kind of took the idea, ran with it, made it his own, and built $1 million business plus around it through social media. And what's interesting is that Greg kind of did the opposite, where he started on YouTube and was able to grow by through vain reasons, by doing these kind of high performing videos, talking about intermittent fasting, talking about his philosophy that he formed. Philosophy is like a group of ideas. And so for him, it was, you can do reverse pyramid training. I train 2 to 3 days a week, and I still look like this, and I only eat 2 meals a day, and here are all the benefits of it. Because one, I don't have to worry about food in the morning, right? You need to actually do things, figure out your own way of doing it, why it applies to your life, and then be able to leverage that and articulate that to the people that follow you. And that's how you attract the people that want to learn more about that, right? He's not directly calling out, busy founders that only have 2 hours a day to work, go to the gym, here's what you do. No, he just says, I work out 2 hours a week. Do you want to do the same? Here's how I do it. Here's the benefits of intermittent fasting. I get to focus in the morning, not worry about food, and I get to feast it at the end of the day. I get to eat huge meals and do all of this stuff. He's very pains and benefits oriented, which we talked about in the curriculum calls, right? And this is why I keep saying the curriculum calls are complementary to this video that we're going over now. So breaking these down, we're at 11:04. But my point here with Kinobody is that he started on here, and now he doesn't really post, right? He's gotten what he's gotten. He eventually transitioned into ads, and now he's bigger on Instagram. He's kind of built his authority, built his businesses, and he has the brand perception around him that he doesn't have to put in as much manual work or effort anymore. He's focused much more on lever moving things, like getting on podcasts and promoting his products and his programs by different vessels. But he built the base of his one-person business on social media through a personal brand, and eventually started to wean off of that. So there are a lot of lessons you can pull from everything we talked about here. We could go over Rob Lipsett. Joey, do you want to go over Rob Lipsett? Do you have anything that we could talk about pertaining to him?
So one thing that I noticed with Rob, I haven't talked to him personally too much, but he has a lot of content on both his YouTube channel and his Instagram. But up until recently, it didn't really seem like that was translating to Twitter. So lately, I have noticed that he started repurposing his content from other platforms and actually utilizing that on Twitter to help him grow. So, like Dan said, being clear about the one that you start on, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever the case, as long as you have the time and mental resources, thinking about other platforms that you can start growing on via repurposing your content will really help you out. And I think that's something that Rob's been doing a good job of lately.
Yeah. It's interesting because Rob, I love Rob. I've talked to him. I had him on the podcast, but it does seem like he hit a stagnation with his brand. He might have taken it too easily. He stopped posting on YouTube a bit. But in the golden age of fitness was when he was the biggest, and he was doing the high performing topics like the 10,000 calorie challenge, multiple ones of those. And this is kind of how he built his initial name for himself. And then he kind of slowed down because he was doing vlogs. And then on Instagram, he was focused mainly on, it was just pictures of him, right? There wasn't really any value being given. And that's one thing I've noticed quite a bit, is that you don't we'll end with this lesson, is that like ideas trump all. Ideas and education trump all in the social media game. You can pivot and transition as much as you want, but ideas have to form the basis of it. They have to sit in people's heads, and you have to prioritize the development and collection of ideas that you get by pursuing your own goals and reading books and consuming content around the things that you want to become an expert in. And because with Rob, he's starting to transition into more educational style content on Instagram, specifically with Reels. But I believe that's only because he was starting to lose steam just relying on his looks, right? He had to bring a new dimension to not only himself, but his brand, because looks took him a long way. But then it started to like burn out because there wasn't the education aspect there. And I may be just talking out of my ass here. As I said, I love Rob. I don't know the back end of his business. I'm just going off of what I see personally on Instagram. And yeah, I believe that covers it. Joey, anything left from you? Everyone is connecting.
Yeah, so
oh, you're on.
I'm on the treadmill.
Okay.
Yeah.
While Joey's talking about this, this was like a problem in the last chat. If you guys want to connect, do it now. In like just start. I don't want to say spam because that's not really going to work, but try to follow each other in the chat. Make some friends, because those friends can go a long way. I bet Joey and I could have met in a chat in one of these things and been business partners a few years later. That's actually kind of what happened.
Yeah, actually, it is what happened, because I'm pretty sure you were the first person to ever DM me on Twitter, and we've kept in touch for the past 3 years. So, yeah, forgive me being on the treadmill, multitasking. There we go.
We're getting big. I mean, we're getting small.
Yeah. People who follow me on Twitter and know my pin thread know why I'm on the treadmill again. But one thing I'll always soapbox about when given the opportunity is a common thing I hear with information like this is it's overwhelming, right? Like, this is a pretty fast-paced thing, ton of great information, and it's natural to feel overwhelmed. I find myself feeling that, like I'm doing a YouTube cohort right now as a participant, and it seems overwhelming. The thing to keep in mind is you have time. So you don't need to feel rushed or compare yourself to others in terms of results over time. Like Dan said, it's taken him years to get to this point. Dan is still figuring some things out as he goes, just like every creator that you look up to. So as you go through this material, don't seek perfection, seek progress. And you only get progress through experimentation and taking imperfect action, rather than trying to get perfect, like chasing perfection in your head and sitting around because you're like, oh, I don't want to write this tweet. Like, what if people don't like it? What if I get on camera and people don't like how I talk? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're putting in the reps and developing over time. Like, there are parallels with fitness. As you go to the gym, you don't work out once and become C-Bum or Kino Body or whoever you look up to. It takes consistent effort of trial and error and screwing up and asking questions and stuff like that to get where you want to go. So again, be consistent, be sustainable, and you will get results as long as you stick with it.
Nice. Yeah, that reminds me of the conversation we were having with Justin yesterday about the launcheur. But just launch shit. Literally, that's all you can do. Launch and improve. But okay, Devin, you might have stuff to say. While Devin is collecting himself, you got the bong in the background, dude. Okay. Next call. So as I said, this one is a bit less tangible. Branding is it's such like an interesting thing where you just figure it out along the way. But the next call with content, I will be able to give more like actionable steps on content itself. Branding, the actionable steps are just like put stuff out there and see what fucking works. But yeah, next call will be good. I'm actually very stoked for the call with Joey for the medium form content, because that'll be even more actionable relating to content itself. Devin, are you cleared up? I think you're muted. I can't hear you. Oh, okay. Yeah, either way. What I think Devin was going to say anyways is that support. So I know that these sprints can get like incredibly, like the links, Webinar Gem, I need to switch that software fast because it's really annoying like getting people in here. I posted the right link in the email and I saw people at the beginning saying it was the wrong link. It's Webinar Gem. It's annoying, but at the same time, if you guys have questions, you can always reach out to Devin. Not like don't ask like the high level question. Ask like support and building questions to Devin, and that is join.modernmastery.co/support. Luke, how long are these sprints? It is 4 calls total. So this was the brand call. The next one will be the content call. Next, after that on Monday, will be the medium form content call with Joey, which is going to be an absolute treat. This man has gained he's ghostwriting stuff. Gained millions of followers for people on Twitter. He knows the game like the back of his hand. And then the last call will be Q&A. So, okay, that's actually something important to bring up, is that in the dashboard, please, please, please at least binge or go through the other curriculum recordings at least once, because it will all come together as we're talking about these things, right? Because there is going to be some repetition, but repetition is such an important thing in this stuff, where you just have to attack things from all different angles until it clicks and you're like, oh, okay, this is, yeah, I've got this creator shit down easy. But that is it for this call. I hate to cut the people off that are still, oh, Philosophy of Awareness, what's up, dude? It's good to see you in here. I love you, man. We need to do a Spaces soon again. Okay. But everyone follow Philosophy of Awareness. Just search him on Twitter. Great dude. Love him. But that is it. Hate to cut you guys off from the chat. I think you'll be able to chat a bit after this. Jan, the dashboard. So for sprints, you should have login details to go to the dashboard, get the Notion template that's in there, the other 4 curriculum calls. If you don't have access to the dashboard and you don't have a login link in your email, go to the support link, which is join.modernmastery.co/support, or you can just send a straight email to support@thedanco.com and just say, hey, I don't have login access for the sprints. We will help you out there. Okay, that's it. Enough rambling. Thank you all. Thank you guys for coming. You'll get an email later today about the call recording being up. It will probably be towards later in the day. Okay, so be patient with that. Don't be sending me emails asking where the curriculum call recording's at. It'll be there. Okay, love you guys. I appreciate you showing up. Have an absolutely incredible rest of your day. Peace.